Welcome to M Squared TechCast.
Hey, it's Matt Roush.
And Mike Brennan.
And we're back with another segment of the M Squared TechCast with a longtime friend of the show.
Newly married Enrico Schaefer.
Oh, congratulations. I didn't know that.
It's been about 2 months now, I think, right?
You know, it could be 4 months, but I haven't done the math, but I think it's probably 4 months.
4 months.
Well, you better
okay.
figure out when it's 1 year. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
You don't want to forget that one.
I got my calendaring program set up on Google Calendar. I should be good.
Okay.
Reminder's coming.
Sounds
Missed
good.
that first one. You're in the heap of trouble. So, all right. So what we're going to talk about is top data trends to expect for 2020.
Yeah. You know, when you guys were asking me what I thought might be really interesting in terms of what's going to happen next year, I immediately knew the answer, and that is it's all really becoming about data and privacy. I mean, privacy is the other half of data.
Right.
And with everything that's happening both domestically and across the world in terms of privacy rights and data protection, big fines for folks on data breach issues, you can just kind of feel this groundswell coming. And in the U.S., you know, we don't have any data privacy rights to speak of.
Well, California is developing them, right?
They have implemented starting in January,
Right.
and so that is going to be probably a first of many states that are going to want to start to protect their citizens.
Right.
And do something that is analogous to GDPR in the EU, where
Yeah, so I was going to say that's really the example, isn't it? So
it is, and it took years and years to get developed and implemented. But essentially, what GDPR does in the EU is it says every person has the right, the inalienable right to their own data. And so, like you have certain fundamental God-given rights in the EU, their
your
position
person and
is
your possessions
data.
and
Your
all that
data
stuff.
is
Yep.
one of those rights, and so every company that ends up getting your data that is identifiable to you has a whole lot of regulatory items that they have to put in place in order to protect you and your data, and to allow you to reclaim all your data, to have all your data deleted, to be able to know exactly where your data is stored across their networks and their servers. Well, that's a huge ask, but the big companies have implemented those back-end technologies in order to make that happen. Well, we're the opposite in the U.S. In the U.S., it's like, yeah, I click-wrapped yes on I gave you all of my data, and you can do whatever you want with it. We don't even think about it,
Oh, yeah.
right? We just
Who reads
ahead,
the terms
click
of
yes.
service? Who really reads that? Yes, and the privacy.
And it's
Not
all
even the
fine
lawyers
print,
do.
4 pages long, you know,
Yep.
boring stuff.
Impenetrables, 6-point type, right.
well,
okay.
because we already know what it says.
It says we can do whatever we want with your data, more or less,
Exactly,
right? Yeah.
Exactly. So, not in California anymore. And so,
Yeah.
starting in January, companies over 25 million, 50,000 users in California, these types of companies now have to start providing end users data rights and taking precautions to protect that personal data.
Well, 2 very large companies are based in California, Facebook and Google. Now, if they have to do it for California, does that carry over to the other 49 states?
Yeah, is it like emission standards? Is there going to be one for California and one for everybody else?
Well, I think that if I take and put my my me hat on, I hope so, because then what'll happen next is the federal government will step in and say, whoa, we can't have 50 different data privacy rights across all 50 states. Data is traveling across state lines. It's interstate commerce. And guess who actually wants federal legislation right now? Facebook and Google.
Right.
And the reason why is twofold. One is they can't handle 50 different state regulatories. There's actually 3 reasons. The third is they've already built the network to be able to handle data privacy, so they had to do it for GDPR. And
okay.
And 3, the reality is it's a great market barrier against competition for these big companies. They actually support regulation because they know it's going to make it that much harder for the up-and-comer companies to get in the game and
Barrier
compete.
to entry. Yep.
Barrier to entry.
Yep.
So what's the possibilities that what they're doing in Europe will become the model for what we do in the States, or is something very similar?
I think it's going to be similar. I mean, the EU, the GDPR is pretty dramatic in terms of the rights that it provides individuals to their own data. So I'm not expecting that our, buyer beware American Western, cowboy spirit is ever going to embrace that, because we'll always wait towards no companies are able to run us over like a freight train, and, and we just line up like lemurs and jump off the cliff, right? So, I don't think we'll ever get there, but I do think, that
there's three metaphors there. There's the air, there's the train, there's the lemur, and then I think it's lemmings that jump off the cliff.
Oh, it is lemmings.
It is
Right.
lemmings.
Yeah.
I don't think the trains jump off too often, but once in a while.
Oh, they might though in 2020.
Yes.
They see some of these data regulations that are going to come. So so I think that the big companies are going to push it at a federal level in order to avoid having more Californias come down the pipe.
Yeah, makes sense. Just a question of when. I think with the current administration, they're more laissez-faire. They're not into
you have
regulation.
a pretty business-friendly administration
So
right
maybe
now,
if the Democrats win in 2020, then you'll see it. But otherwise, I don't really think you'll see it for a while. But who knows?
Yeah, and it's going to be Congress that's going to have to push it. And, there will always be companies that will be fighting it. But generally, if it's the right regulation that probably is already drafted by Facebook and Google themselves.
And they're all ready to go. They get their army of lobbyists out there.
How
right?
similar are the California and GDPR regulations?
So GDPR is more dramatic, and so there are similarities between what's happening in California. California is less about your data rights and more about making sure that these companies are doing what they need to protect your data.
Right.
There's lots of different ways to get in trouble with some of these new frameworks, but one of which is if you get hacked and the data gets exposed, you could end up like, I think British Airways got hit with $228 million fine because they got hacked and user data ended up getting.
That's a lot of steam towels on that flight to London. Boy,
Yeah,
man, that's
they'll
a big
just jack up their rates, though, and cover it, right? So
We end up paying in the end.
yes.
Yep. Okay.
So automation, connected cities, mobility.
Oh, I love talking about that stuff.
That strikes right at the heart of what we want to do here in Detroit, right?
It does, and so in the realm of data, right? We heard the last 3 years about big data, big data, big data. Big data turned out to be nothing because it was so big, no one could do anything with it, right? No one knew where it lived. No one knew how to, what the good data versus the bad data was on their networks. And so, yes, big data was this great buzzword, but it ended up being a big yawner. Well, the data is all still there, and in fact, now the data is exploding, the amount of data, and a lot of that has to do with mobility and autonomous and some of these other technologies, smart cities. Can you imagine a smart city, how much data is going to be collected, right? Just
trillions and
trillions of terabytes a minute.
Just crazy.
And they're starting to build algorithms that will, and analytics around that so that they can actually do interesting things. So AI is essentially predictive algorithms on data, what is going to happen next given all the probabilities in the data. So you're going to see a lot of AI-based systems, a lot of analytics-based systems, and you're going to start to data's going to become meaningful.
Yeah.
Will that help the traffic flow more efficiently or anything like that? I mean, so sort of the more municipal stuff, that we see.
It will, as long as you trust the people who are controlling the algorithm to, to not work against you rather than for you. So, but it has the potential.
Are they black hats or white hats? We don't know. So
probably gray.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
that was
probably gray.
that's I always thought. I think you and I talked about this once. Is that the quickest way to really cripple a city would be to really screw with the traffic lights so you create huge traffic backups.
Oh, yeah,
anywhere, and
definitely.
I live in Salt Lake City. I think the traffic lights there, because of the religious connotations of the way the city developed and everything, were all there to work against you, to just give you a sense of a sense of being controlled, like
Yes,
like
right.
there's traffic lights everywhere and you're gonna have to stop.
Okay, all right.
And AI. One of the things I was watching on the History Channel, one of those little short hour-long programs they do about technology, and they showed how AI was being used in China, and it scared the heck out of me.
Should.
I mean, you can't scratch yourself in China without some comrade seeing it somewhere. And now they've got it so facial recognition everywhere, and they've eliminated the need when you go to an ATM machine. It reads your facial recognition and then lets you in. My God, that's 666 written all over it. I mean, holy cow, right? Hopefully that's not where we're going here in this country.
Well, look, there's this huge tension between private data privacy and AI, because AI requires, in certain instances, for it to know who you are in order to interact with you.
Right.
But the big trend is to anonymize as much data as possible, so that data cannot be tracked to a person in itself or in combination with other data, so that you don't have to comply with some of these regulations. But it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, well, that's what you need. The AI harnesses the big data, and then it all kind of works together to a centralized control, which, doesn't fly well in this country. But, China, that's always the way it's been. It's just, countries like that, yes, but more Western countries, I don't know. It's a real tough situation.
Yeah, it is, and maybe it'll be blockchain, and therefore it'll be decentralized control. But it's going to be fast moving.
Everybody's using blockchain these days.
I feel like I'm living in a Philip K. Dick novel. I really do.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
It's just a question of which one, one of the more benign ones or one of the really evil ones. So
good and bad in both, probably. I think it's just going to be a really interesting time in the next 10, 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got a couple of minutes left, Dave. We're good. Let's talk a little bit about your practice. This is where you get to do the shameless plug. Now, I've known you for a long time, and you've always been in Traverse City, but a couple of years ago, you set up an office right down by Comerica Park, right?
Yeah, so we're down in Detroit at the WeWork space down in Campus Martius,
Sure.
as long as that continues to exist. And
yes, WeWork. That's
WeWork,
another story
sure,
we won't go
exactly.
into, but it's like, boy.
we work
Do I
for
not
now.
have to go
Yes.
to work if
Yes.
WeWork is?
Yeah, what a scam. But, hey, no, we can't say that, can we? So, so how's that working out
We'll
for
fix
you?
that in post.
I know you were saying something about when your last son graduates from high school up in Traverse City, that you may move down here permanently, but I don't know if you're still there or not.
Absolutely. I mean, Detroit is rocking, and it's been an amazing thing to come back down here after 25 years and see what's happening and be a part of it. I feel like a carpetbagger coming in when it's good, but I'm here now, and I'm here every other week, and then as soon as my youngest graduates, I'll be here all the time, and we do internet and tech law, so a lot of intellectual property, and we specialize in tech company representation. So.
I suppose as a disclaimer, I should also mention you are my tech attorney, so yes, so he's working, as you all know, I'm working on a video project, so his people are helping with that, negotiate all that sorts of stuff, and examine my software to make sure we're not stepping on anybody's toes. So.
No, I hope you're stepping. I mean, how am I going to litigate for you?
I
if you're
know,
not
yes.
stepping on my toes? I'm actually looking for problems.
Oh, okay.
No litigation, no money.
Yeah, that's it. No billable hours. What's up with that?
Yeah.
Huh? So,
Okay.
so folks want to find out more. How do they reach out to you?
So www.traverselegal.com.
Traditional four-year students love Lawrence Technological University's thriving campus life, but LTU has always met non-traditional students' needs too. Lawrence Tech offers over 100 degree and certificate programs that can get adult students started or back on track. And most of our classes are conveniently offered evenings at our beautiful Southfield campus or online, so you can balance your social, family, and work life even while you power up your career. Lawrence Tech, where Blue Devils dare.